Let's talk about what's happening in Venezuela. The former vice president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodríguez, has been sworn in as the interim president of Venezuela following the capture of President Nicolas Maduro by the U.S. forces early on Saturday. And the swearing-in ceremony taking place. But what's going to happen next? Because Donald Trump has already warned Venezuela's new leader, Delcy Rodríguez, that she could pay a very big price, probably even bigger than Maduro, if she doesn't do what's right. So the swearing-in has taken place to enjoy, but it is happening with the cloud of the threat that has come in from the United States, from Donald Trump, who goes on to say that there will be a bigger price to pay, even bigger price than Maduro. What does this indicate? What could happen next in Venezuela now?
Well, President Trump himself has said that there were two waves of attacks planned. The first wave, of course, was successful. And within half an hour, the American military system showed that it is efficient. It had the intelligence, it had the knowledge, and it had the military reach to capture Maduro and his wife and bring them back. And the entire operation took something like half an hour. But he also said that in case that didn't work, we had a second wave planned. And that second wave did not go through, wasn't necessary. So it's entirely possible that the Americans could do something again, something similar again. We don't know what they will do, but we know what they can do. So that is already in place. A second wave is entirely possible. And what Trump is saying, it's a threat, but it's not an idle threat.
Okay, not an idle threat. What could happen next? Remember, she is part of a group of senior officials in Maduro's administration that currently appears to control Venezuela, but this comes under this threat of the United States. So we don't know what could happen next. There could be a wave of new attacks on Venezuela. In fact, we have more breaking updates coming in. After U.S. captures Maduro, the U.S. action has been slammed globally, with China and Russia openly condemning the United States intervention, saying U.S. has broken international law. And there are now calls coming in to free Maduro. So we're seeing strong statements that have come in from Russia as well as China condemning the U.S. intervention in Venezuela, with the United Nations Security Council also holding an emergency meeting after the audacious U.S. military operation in Venezuela over the weekend that resulted in the capture of leader Nicolas Maduro. Well, Srinjoy, Russia, China have condemned the U.S. intervention, but that hasn't been the case with multiple countries, including the United Kingdom, including France, including countries in the European nation. They have not condemned the U.S. action, going on to say that they are in support of a peaceful transition to democracy, but they've not called out the United States. Russia and China have. The UNSC also holding a meeting, but is that all going to result in anything at all? Because just yesterday you also had Marco Rubio, who went on to say that he doesn't really care what the UN is saying.
First of all, the UN, whatever you say about it, is currently a broken system. So the Americans have probably realized that. The Russians and the Chinese are naturally strongly opposed to this, and they've made it very clear that they have condemned it. Now, the Europeans, whether it's the British or the French or the Germans or the Canadians, all of them have some problems with this, but they are also allies with America. So what they've done is they have hedged it a little bit. They have said that, look, we want peaceful resolution, but of course, Maduro was a bad guy, but we want peace. So it's that kind of statement. Each statement, if you look at it, there is a little of this and a little of that. And this is what the Europeans can do at this point, because they have to deal with Trump. The Americans are an ally. The Americans head NATO. Whether it's Canada or Italy or France, even France, Germany, Britain, they are all part of NATO. So as a result, They see America as an ally. They see America as a friend. So naturally, you don't expect Canada or Britain or France, even France, despite its history of being opposed to lots of things that the Americans done in the past, including vis-a-vis Iraq, even all of these countries have had to hedge their bets a little.
So, Srinjoy, does it mean that the world will be watching, except for offering these words of comfort to Venezuela or calling out the United States? Is there going to be any change at all, or is the world going to just watch what is unfolding as mute spectators, not being able to do anything at all?
As I said, however well-meaning the UN is, the United Nations is, and you saw the UN Secretary General reacting very, very soon, right after the incident in Venezuela, saying he was alarmed. And not only alarmed, he wanted an immediate sort of a situation where all this would end. Despite that, despite the UN Secretary General's immediate remarks, nothing really has gone on as far as the UN is concerned. Sure, there's been an emergency session of the UN Security Council, fine, but at the end of the day, the UN is not as effective as it was in the 50s and 60s. You had a UN force fighting in Korea. You had a UN force fighting in the Congo. All of that is in the past. So at this point, the UN, I mean, to be brutally frank, is broken in many ways.
Okay, all right. Do stay with us.